oh boy, a new addition to my collection. Traded an iron cross for it. It's a German
Mom
water
said it's
police.
my turn with a tism. So in the mid-2010s, the U.S. Army finally switched over to the dress blue uniform that they kind of currently use, kind of don't, because now they're switching back to the pinks and greens. But JROTC never had that liberty, considering it's the high school LARP version of the military. JROTC used these uniforms for about another year, till about 2017, actually. And in that time, we did not get a new uniform till about 2018. And I just so happened to have yoinked training materials and one of these uniforms from a poorer unit that I may or may not have been involved with. I'm sure they won't be missing these. JROTC has always worn the uniform slightly different from the actual Army, and it really does show, especially in some of those training material papers, pretty much textbooks, really. So on the right shoulder, where in the big Army, where you would have a deployment patch or a combat patch, instead, on the JROTC uniform, you have a school patch, which almost makes sense. And then on the left shoulder, you have the U.S. Army JROTC patch, which does make sense because it's technically the current unit you're in, because in the big Army, that's where your current unit would be and stuff like that. One thing I am missing is the torch pins that are supposed to go on the lapel, but that's really not an important detail. But you typically, on the U.S. Army uniform, you'd have something along the lines of U.S., like a U.S. pin on there, which obviously we don't have and we're not allowed to have. Typically, brass rank pins are supposed to be used on the shoulder tabs, but some units did it differently. Some units would actually use the Class B cloth rank insignia instead of the brass insignia that you would usually have on there, because we don't stitch our rank on our shoulder like the big Army does. Typically, the cloth rank would be seen on units that aren't as rich or don't have the same budget as some of the bigger ones. Thankfully, I've always had to use the brass stuff. Also, something to note is that typically the big Army would not have the shoulder cords, at least not two of them. They would have a shoulder cord or something like that, but they would not have two of them. That is something that only JROTC does, where you're allowed to have two cords on your uniform. And instead of a beret that you would typically see on a modern JROTC uniform or just a modern big Army uniform, they would wear garrison caps instead. When they did that for a long time. Instead of putting tabs on the shoulder, JROTC would just typically use a pin and put them under the name tag on the uniform. Other than that, everything is relatively the same, I would say. I mean, from afar, they would look like a regular big Army uniform. Now, this is more or less a side note, but they used woodland also a lot longer than the big Army did, because the big Army switched over to UCP officially in 2005, and there are examples of this being used till about 2007. JROTC also wore their woodland different, because instead of wearing actual name tapes that you would see on a regular uniform, they wore their dress name tag, which has always confused me, but oh well. They also wore their brass rank on the collar, even though that's a big no-no in the big Army. JROTC did switch over to UCP before it switched over to dress blues, so again, they used woodland a lot longer than the big Army did. Here's a better example of what they would have worn. This is directly from the textbook itself. Here's also an example from the textbook of a garrison cap that they would have worn during the time, specifically with the dress uniform, the dress greens. Garrison caps really are just better. Berets just fucking suck. I mean, the whole point of a beret, I think in the United States Army was to make everybody look special, because, you know, airborne and fucking green berets and fucking rangers. But, I would assume we came to the idea of having berets through some dumbass colonel in the Pentagon going, "Hey there, everybody's special." Like, seriously, it looks like even more of a LARP when you wear a fucking beret, especially in JROTC. But, I mean, don't tell me that looks fucking retarded. The gray beret, like, the fuck? We're not, like, special. We're just fucking stupid-ass LARPers. I am ashamed that JROTC got a fucking beret. Fucking dumb. Anyways, weird knowledge dump over. Hope that was enough to maybe make a video out of.